As Grant Ellis's candidates continue to negotiate the complex world of The Bachelor Season 29, host Jesse Palmer warned them not to interrupt one another. The women went on their first dates with Grant, including 2 group dates in Episode 2 of Season 29 of The Bachelor. For the first time, Alexi Godin, the recipient of the first impression rose, also got the first one-on-one date automatically, which some speculated was producer manipulation. Zoe McGrady caused a stir on the first group date by repeatedly robbing Grant of the other women. Jesse cautioned the women of Bachelor Season 29 in an interview with EW that they would be held accountable if they choose to interrupt someone. He clarified, "One reality that stands the test of time on The Bachelor is that you will have a chat interrupted at some point. Therefore, I feel that if you are the interrupter, you should be ready for all types of reactions." Jesse went into further detail regarding the possible responses of the Bachelor women to interruptions. "The rest of the cast will be informed," he stated. "They'll confront you. In the future, it's likely that the interruptee will interrupt your personal time. One of The Bachelor's rules is this one. One constant in The Bachelor is that you will eventually have a conversation stopped. As such, I believe that if you are the interrupter, you should be prepared for any kind of response. We'll notify the rest of the cast. They'll confront you. Your personal time will undoubtedly be interrupted in the future, most likely by the interruptee. Among The Bachelor's rules is this one. What The Bachelor can learn from Jesse Palmer's advice. Regarding interruptions, Jesse's warning should have been heeded by the women of The Bachelor season. 29 Jesse has seen it all as the franchise's host and a past Bachelor lead. He is aware of how frequently discussions are cut off and how this might lead to a great deal of animosity between the women. Some of the women were really irritated and outraged when Zoe McGrady took Grant away for some prolonged one-on-one time during a basketball slam dunk competition in The Bachelor Season 29, Episode 2. Furthermore, Allie Jo Hinkes, who hadn't spent any time alone with Grant, was infuriated when Zoe interrupted Juliana Pasquarosa during their conversation at the after-party. After stealing Grant from Zoe, Allie Jo went back and did the apes same to her. Zoe's intrusions were exactly as Jesse had predicted. However, Zoe believed that she was doing what she had to do to maintain Grant's attention on her, so she didn't seem to care what the women thought. Because they appear to be so anxious for the Bachelor lead's attention, the competition between the women for his one-on-one time may get really awkward. It's really immature of them to interrupt one another and then argue about it afterwards. The trivial drama is a waste of their time. They should also hold Grant responsible for interrupting conversations to talk to other women. Nobody ever asks why the main character doesn't just say no and doesn't let the women interrupt and take him away. Grant Ellis, the leading male on Bachelor S29, appeared to lack the emotional intelligence necessary to find love. As seen by his struggles in Episode 2, the women didn't have the opportunity to heed Jesse's counsel when they made their appearances in Grant's season because he gave it to them after production of The Bachelor Season 29 had finished. Much of it is simple sense, though, and they ought to have reached those conclusions on their own, particularly since it's not Season 1 and they've seen what might occur. Awkward and traumatic Bachelor group dates don't have to be made worse by the women robbing Grant for a moment, or in Zoe's case, for much longer. Hopefully, the remainder of The Bachelor Season 29 will see a change in emphasis from drama to love. It was a season unlike any other on The Bachelor. Season 29 had already proven to be full of drama, twists, and accusations of producer manipulation. In the eyes of the audience, the drama unfolding on the screen was starting to feel eerily orchestrated, a direct result of strategic nudging behind the scenes. But it wasn't just the audience who was beginning to notice. For Grant Ellis, the Bachelor of Season 29, the journey to finding love was getting complicated. The women vying for his attention were fiercely competitive, but this time, it wasn't just their personalities and connections with Grant that were being tested, it was the reality TV machine itself. Accusations began to swirl about producer interference, setting the stage for a confrontation that would shake the show's foundation. In Episode 2, after the women had their first dates with Grant, an experience designed to be both romantic and, at times, a little chaotic, a critical moment arrived. The day began like any other. The contestants woke up in the mansion, a place where luxuries and frustrations were equally abundant. The women could already feel the pressure building up. With every new day came the challenge of getting one-on-one time with Grant, and with the first group date just around the corner, They knew the stakes were high. As the women prepared for their respective dates, conversations about strategy began to unfold. "I have to do something bold today," Zoe whispered to her closest confidant Lila as they adjusted their outfits. "I can't just sit back and wait for Grant to come to me. I need to take charge." Lila, who was more reserved, eyed Zoe with a mixture of apprehension and admiration. "Are you sure that's the right approach? People are already talking about how much time you're taking with him." Zoe shrugged off the concerns, adjusting her hair in the mirror. "It's my time with him, not theirs. I'm going to take advantage of it." Meanwhile, across the mansion, the First Impression Rose recipient, Alexi Godin, prepared for her one-on-one date with Grant. The producers had chosen her for the date with an almost calculated sense of timing. After all, the recipient of the First Impression Rose typically held a place of significance in Grant's eyes. But Alexi's elation was tempered by the whispers she'd overheard. There were murmurs about how the producers had orchestrated her date, making her position feel somewhat artificial. In her mind, she had earned her place with Grant, but the rumors of manipulation were hard to shake off. Despite the gossip and the looming sense of tension, Alexi was determined to make the most of her date. "I'm not going to let anyone question my worth," she muttered to herself as she got into the limo. The first group date of the season was a chance for the women to showcase their personalities, their wit, and, of course, their ability to bond with Grant in front of the others. The women had already been warned that the date would involve some competitive elements, but nothing could have prepared them for what was about to unfold. The date took place at a beautiful vineyard, a romantic setting that seemed to be designed specifically for stolen moments and jealousy. After the initial group activities, where Grant interacted with each of the women, it was time for the first one-on-one moments. As the women competed for Grant's attention, it became clear that Zoe was taking charge. Without hesitation, she found moments to steal Grant away, interrupting other women who were already in conversation with him. At first, it was subtle, just a quick exchange, a smile, a touch on the arm, but soon it became more brazen. Zoe would pull Grant away from one woman only to steal him from another moments later. The other women were growing increasingly frustrated, but they didn't want to appear confrontational. After all, they had come to win Grant's heart, and calling attention to Zoe's behavior could backfire. But as the date wore on, tensions reached a boiling point. The other women were fed up. Grant, looking slightly uncomfortable, tried to balance the many women vying for his attention, but Zoe seemed determined to monopolize every moment. The tension in the air was palpable, and whispers spread quickly among the women about how Zoe was playing the game. And then, in the middle of a conversation between Grant and another contestant, Zoe swooped in once again, taking the opportunity to engage Grant in a private conversation. It wasn't long before Jesse Palmer arrived to address the growing tension. He had been backstage, observing the chaos unfold on the group date. He'd seen enough of the manipulation and had already been briefed about the mounting accusations of producer interference. It was clear to him that the contestants needed to be reminded of the rules of the game. Gathering the women in the mansion's living room after the group date, Jesse's usually calm demeanor was replaced by a sense of urgency. The women, who had been gossiping amongst themselves, grew silent as soon as Jesse entered. "Ladies," Jesse began, his tone serious, "I'm sure you all know what's been happening today. Some of you might be feeling frustrated, and some of you may have noticed certain behaviors that you don't agree with." A few women exchanged glances, unsure of where this conversation was going. Jesse continued, "This is The Bachelor, a show that's about love, yes, but also about competition. And in a competition, sometimes people make moves that others don't understand or agree with. But let me make one thing clear. If you choose to interrupt someone's time with Grant, you will be confronted about it." A collective hush fell over the room. Jesse's words were heavy, almost foreboding. Interrupting someone else's moment may seem like a way to gain an advantage, but it's a double-edged sword, Jesse warned. You can't expect to take someone's time without facing the consequences.